Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for Dance Me to the End of Lockdown. During the event, we will be inviting a series of speakers to tell us about how they continued with dance projects during lockdown. We're going to be able to begin with Moving Memory Dance Theatre Company, whom City Arts has known for a while. They're based in the south of England, and we met each other through a digital grant that we both received from the Bering Foundation and the Nominet Trust. Since then, we've spoken about linking up to join projects and do some partnership working, but unfortunately due to the pandemic that's on hold for now. Moving Memory Dance makes visually striking performances which have been surprising and entertaining family audiences since 2010. Their work is drawn from the perspectives and opinions and experiences of older people, especially women, and challenges the assumptions about age and ageing. Moving Memory often work intergenerationally to make sure all ages realise that being older can be liberating and life-enhancing, not something to be dreaded. Their work changes audiences' views of older people in thought-provoking, funny and beautiful and inspiring ways. I am therefore delighted to introduce the creative director, Sean Stevenson, and two of their Moving Well dance facilitators to join us tonight. They're going to show us how they've managed to keep their amazing work going throughout the pandemic. So Sean, it's over to you.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you hugely to you and City Arts for inviting us to be part of this fabulous event. So as Kate said, we set up about 11 years ago in order to offer high quality opportunities, performance making opportunities to older people, in the belief that when people are engaged in creative activities, they lead more fulfilled and happier lives. So we developed a distinctive movement-led practice, which is an amalgam of physical theatre, movement, music, digital forms and spoken words. It's peer-led. And we are about empowering and giving agency to our participants to become the producers and the makers. And yes, Kate is right. Our work is about challenging ageism, particularly in relation to older women, and changing perspectives around age, aging, beauty, for example. So in order to do that, we have three strands to our work: performance, participation, and training. And you will meet shortly Jeanette and Glyn, who are Moving Well facilitators, but they are also two of our core ensemble, performance ensemble makers, and they will talk a little bit about their experience over the pandemic. But they have, the core ensemble are aged between 50 and 88. They've created a wide repertoire of work, both venue-based and street-based, non-traditional venues, because we're trying to reach as wide a non-traditional theatre audience as possible. So what I would like to do is to show a short movie which captures some of the work that came out of projects that we did over the pandemic. And you will see a little snippet from one of our Moving Well participatory groups, who worked together only for 6 weeks and created a wee choreography in response to the pandemic, followed by Cozy Cocoon, which is a fabulous film. We're not showing the whole thing, just a moment of it, which was created with our Moving More group, who worked consistently for quite a long time over the pandemic and worked alongside Glyn and Jeanette and our associate artist, filmmaker and performer Bob Carper, to create this gorgeous wee film. During the pandemic, we shifted everything online, but we did maintain a live presence. The core ensemble delivered what we call delightful deliveries to people who were isolated, wee moments of joyful performance, but also made a new street piece, Busting Trifles, which went to the streets in Thanet and Medway about a month ago. So we're going to see some snippets from each of those projects. Thank you.
my cosy cocoon.
Nature, that space that I've been yearning for.
It's everything that I love. I love dancing, I love watching people dance.
I want others to feel welcome in this space.
Such a lovely place.
Somewhere that I could retreat from the world, have some time by myself.
My ideal for Bourne.
Fresh air.
I want it to be pleasing.
Feel restored and breasted and rejuvenated.
And beautiful.
Thank you. Okay, so that gives you a flavour of our work, and I think our concerns around shifting to online work as well as blended with live were not around, surprisingly maybe, around the technical resources, because digital resources have always been part of our work. I think it was more about how we could maintain and establish new creative connections between participants, and it's those special creative communities that we build that can lead to some incredibly magical work. And the other main concern for myself and my colleagues was around accessibility. So we did quite a lot of research around what we meant by being inclusive and how we could actually take our offer further. But that's enough of me talking, because I'd like really now to hand over to Lynn and Jeanette, as I say, who are core performance ensemble members as well as lead moving well facilitators. Over to you two.
Well, I'm going to speak first, I think. I'm Jeanette, and I've been a core company member with Moving Memory since the very beginning, over 10 years now. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the performance aspect of our work that Sean was talking about, and in particular, bringing Busting Trifles streets in May this year. So as you saw, Busting Trifles is a piece, we started working on it in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic, actually, collecting our stories and shared experiences of the first lockdown. When restrictions were lifted for a little while and we got together in our rehearsal space in Canterbury for the first time in months, the time felt very precious, actually, although I think none of us realised at that point just how precious it was going to be, and how we'd have to develop our ideas and moves almost exclusively on Zoom for the next several months. But that's what we did, adapting our living rooms and kitchens into dance rehearsal spaces, which is particularly hazardous for me because I live in this tiny flat here. But when we were finally able to get back together in our studios again in April this year, the joy of being together again after so long apart was actually overwhelming. And even under social distancing rules, we were able to share ideas more easily in terms of reading each other's body language and developing moves together, and also have a laugh together without waiting our turn on Zoom or having to raise our hands to make a joke as you have to. And apart from anything else, we'd been neglecting to use our legs on Zoom. So Sian had to keep reminding us to move around rather than remain rooted to the spot as you have to be. So we developed Busting Trifles with a combination of online and in-person rehearsals over that next month following April, which included the dress fittings with our fabulous costume designer, Liz, as you could see in the film. And when we took it to the streets in May, it had been a long time since we faced an audience together. And when we put on those costumes and walked out in front of those baffled faces, watching people slowly get it and get behind us and cheer us on, it felt as if we'd never been away. And one chap watching us in Canterbury said, you don't realise how much you've missed something until you get it back. And there was a palpable sense of that amongst us and the audience, which, whether that was outside the care home in Margate with our elderly audience shouting, "Well done, dears," or the children in St Nicholas School, as you could see in there, gleefully throwing hundreds and thousands over us, or the shoppers in Medway shopping centre asking, "What the bloody hell was all that about?" Or the students in the park in Canterbury whooping and cheering us in the sunshine. It was absolutely thrilling to experience that connection again and to realise the importance of bringing that special performances and experiences to people who'd been denied it for the last 18 months, whether that was the delightful delivery that Sian was mentioning there, or a face full of powerful women in flamboyant costumes on the street. I should say that I have a vested interest in making the online side of things work, because only a year ago I have moved to Newcastle on Tyne, where I am now, and another of the core company lives in Yorkshire now. So Zoom has been and will continue to be completely invaluable to our performance practice, as it has been in other ways. And I'll pass on to Glyn now to say more about that.
Okay, hi, I'm Glyn. So Jeanette and I ran 12 workshops together, which ended in the middle section of the film that you've just seen, called Cozy Cocoons. Although we've trained with moving memory for now 10 years, we are relatively inexperienced facilitators and certainly had never done anything on Zoom before. So the whole thing was quite daunting and very, very challenging from the beginning. But what I think happened was that all the challenges turned into positives. Just a bit about that Cozy Cocoon piece, in that we followed the normal moving memory practice of taking the ideas for the choreography from the participants and from their stories. And in that piece, we were concentrating on trying to find positive aspects of the lockdown and of COVID. So we asked people to imagine their perfect place, their comfortable place, their happy place during lockdown, somewhere that they felt safe, which would be their cozy cocoon. And we worked on moves from that, and then picked an object from that space, be it imaginary or real, to focus on to inform the choreography. So that was the basis of the piece. But the challenges, I think, were very interesting for us, because we had a very, very disparate group. I mean, I know groups are always extremely varied, but we had, apart from the usual difference in experience and understanding of the work, of different needs, different bodily needs, etc. We were also looking at how to access and help someone with visual impairment, cognitive impairment due to underlying health conditions, and extreme fatigue through having long COVID. So we did have quite a lot of demands on the workshop and on how we ran it. And I think this turned into a huge positive for me anyway, as a facilitator, because I had to read up and research and find warm-ups and improvisations that would actually suit the group and suit the Zoom mode, which wasn't easy, but actually I found hugely beneficial. And in looking at access for various needs, it actually made me scrutinize my practice and concentrate really on vocabulary and language and pacing and all those things that we tend to take for granted in a face-to-face situation in a workshop. And through the process, we did manage to, we ended up with an extremely cohesive group, even though the participants came from Newcastle, the Midlands, France, the Isle of Wight, and all places in between. And I think we ended with a cohesive group that really worked well together, produced the material for that fantastic film. And I think having that target really did help the group to be cohesive and had a result that everyone was really delighted with. And the two participants who were here represented the extremes of experience in the group, because Miranda had never done anything at all in the way of dance or movement, and Val happily spent her lockdown COVID going to every dance class she could find, and I think we seemed to fill the brief for both of them, so we were pleased with the result.
Great, thank you, and thank you so much to Moving Memory Dance for such an inspiring opening. Their work is really inclusive, and obviously their approach to co-production is not only good practice, but it really champions the work of older people, and also their approach creates an environment for healthy and happy lives. So thank you to everybody for moving memory to the introduction to this event tonight. This past year has been particularly challenging for a lot of arts companies, continuing with their programming and particularly in engaging participants in ongoing events. Our Celebrating Age project, funded by the Arts Council and the Baring Foundation, has had to adapt significantly during this time. Initially, in partnership with the Theatre Royal and the Concert Hall, we were to work with the Halle Orchestra, the songwriting group, and dancers to produce a live performance at the beginning of this year. This project would have been a grand finale to a wider project exploring all sorts of different art forms. It soon became very clear that lockdown would mean very limited contact with participants. In consultation with participants in the creative team, we all made a decision to move towards producing site-specific work. So it was a sort of screen dance approach. And we approached filmmaker Sima Gonsai to bring us in, or to bring her in to help us achieve this. Nottingham-based choreographer Tom Dale had already begun some initial face-to-face taster sessions with participants, but we also knew that we would have to move online if we were to continue with the project. And the aim at the beginning of the project was to create a sound piece led by Isabel Jones from Salamander Tandem. And this was to open the show at the Theatre Royal, with audiences experiencing an immersive soundscape that would guide audiences to the dance performance. After lengthy discussions with Isabel on entering lockdown, her practice of sound walking outdoors looked like a positive way forward, and we were able to offer a series of sound walks with participants in the summer of 2020. Both to offer an immersive experience for people and also to gather sound recordings that would be composed as a soundtrack for the dancers. During this time, we've been able to form a new partnership with Southwell Workhouse, managed by the National Trust. At one point in the project, we had hoped to do a site-specific screen dance piece at the Workhouse. However, this is not to be, as we went into another lockdown in the autumn of last year. However, the National Trust have been extremely supportive of our project, and they've entered into a lot of conversations with us and helped us, providing us with research material to support the production of the screen dance piece. It's been an incredible experience over the last few months, certainly not planned in any way, but it's shown us with all the motivation and positivity that solutions can be found to continue with our creative work. And the different elements to this project have made it incredibly complex. Oh, apologies, I've got terrible Wi-Fi connections. I was just introducing Tom, who has graduated from Laban. winning the Centre's award-winning award for outstanding achievement in choreography, dancing with leading choreographers and companies, including Mathew Bourne's Adventures in Motion Pictures, before focusing on creative work and forming his own company, Tom Dale Company. It is here that Tom is able to pursue his artistic vision, bringing about artists that work collaboratively and producing exciting and innovative projects that interrogate art in motion and have a particular synergy with the digital arts and electronic music. Tom, we would love to hear from you now about the project.
Hello, everybody. I am unmuted now. Thanks a lot, Kate. Hopefully everybody can hear me fine. So, I mean, I'm the choreographer for this project, the Workhouse, and I've worked as a dance artist and choreographer for over 20 years, facilitating groups of all ages and abilities, from the most elite professional dancers to primary school kids and everything in between. But I have never actually choreographed a project on older dancers, and when I was asked to do this by Kate, I did jump at the chance because I think it's something that I've wanted to do for a little while, and I saw an opportunity for me to develop my craft and skills in a slightly new direction. Not that it really, in fact, changes my working methods at all, but I just saw that it was a nice opportunity for the dance ecology of Nottingham and for my practice in general. So in general, as a choreographer, a big part of what I do is look for ways of moving. So we might have a theme or a topic or an abstraction or a piece of music or something like that, and I will look for ways of moving that seem kind of relevant, I guess, and I look for those movement identities that seem fun to work with, and then we explore those movement characteristics, and then we start to create with those, and then we start to craft that in time and space, and that's when the real sort of choreography comes in, and often with music, obviously. Now, this project then going on to Zoom and going online obviously did give me a big fear at first when we first started to talk about it, but it you know, and it threw up my normal working methodology completely up in the air, and I wondered like how we would make it fulfilling, because I thought that obviously there's no point in doing an artistic project if it's not fulfilling, creative, fun and engaging and all of those things. And since we weren't coming together to get the you know, the sort of personability of the project, we didn't have that element. I thought that it was really important that I still made it all of those things: fun, fulfilling, engaging, creative. So I instinctively kind of knew that the crafting part of what I do, the sort of rehearsing and the shaping of movement in time and space and crafting movements together with each other and all of that, and those kind of spatial dynamics and spatial tension things that I would normally be working with in a live space, I knew that that wouldn't happen, and that crafting element needed to come from elsewhere in the project. And thankfully, we were working with Sima, who then had to kind of undertake that crafting role, and so she had as much to do with the choreography, in fact, as I did. I was kind of there to provide the inspiration and create the space for exploration and exploring the theme through our physical thinking and through our bodies. And I was the sort of instigator of that, and kind of almost like a lyricist sometimes, providing word showers and inspiration. And I kind of had to guide all of our participants through a number of sessions to enable Sima to gather enough content for then her to go and actually choreograph the thing. So it actually threw up, because we had to do this project over Zoom, it did throw up a very interesting challenge, and one that I did actually kind of see the opportunity of, because actually the crafting stage of choreography is not not my favorite part. It's really not my favorite part. So my favorite part of choreographing is the exploration. It's where how we start to create some movement that can then be explored, and yeah, the inspirational part, the connection to music and all of that is something that I really enjoy. And then the crafting in time and space, and maybe the relationships, exploring duets, trios, quartets, and the spatial tensions of that became Sima's job in a way. So it was an interesting sort of switch of roles. So working in this project, we had planned a lot of sessions, 2 sessions a week for quite a number of weeks. So I had to, because I changed my tack, and I decided that in order to make a decent, fulfilling experience and to get the participants to really perform, I would have to get them to kind of not perform in a way. So sometimes the best way to perform is to not perform, and it's just to experience the movement and experience the moment that you're going through in that state of being. And so I decided to design all of my sessions to almost like treat it as a boot camp in choreography and improvisation in a way. And so I would start each session with a 20 to 30 minute improvised warm-up of continuous movement. That warm-up offered a framework for the participants to connect to their bodies through their imagination, basically. And I would throw images after images and connect that anatomically through the body with qualities. The class is like designed to explore physical sensations and connect to like the pleasure of moving to music. But it's really about exploring these physical sensations and this research that is designed to allow the sort of growth in awareness of that, the multisensory connection for the participants. And it's that growth in awareness and that working through improvisation and through these images that also lead towards, in the end, kind of ways that we can drop into improvisations and into ways of crafting material. But yeah, this 20 to 30 minute warm-up was like improvisational, explorational, research-based, but also it was all about connecting to the pleasure of moving. And then so after that, we would then break for 5 minutes or so, get our breath back, get some water. I mean, that was quite a physically challenging experience for everybody, myself included. And then we would work on something more specific, but I was staying away from the theme a little bit in sometimes, and then sometimes I'd go into the theme. But this was our method of rehearsing, was to rehearse our improvisational capabilities. So I might do a workshop on musicality, looking at various aspects of musicality. I do remember trying to do an offbeat and onbeat part of the workshop, which was really hard over Zoom and completely failed. But we did do some lovely musicality workshops as well, looking at sort of blended motions and movements and legato, and then more staccato movements, and then working with crescendo and diminuendo as well, and like how we can combine all of those various aspects of musicality into our moving body. But like I might have also done workshops on flow and seamlessness in movement, or finding pathways and movements through the body. We explored various words and actions and verbs. We used a lot that were to do with various aspects of the workhouse. And we got, I was sharing my screen and then learned how to allow participants to annotate on their screen as well. And yeah, we were doing all of that. We were collecting and mining information all the time, and then working out through our sort of improvisation training how we could then do our physical thinking in the moment and perform without performing. So obviously there's a lot of contradictions I'm throwing in there, but it did offer a nice opportunity for us to create a really kind of rich and enjoyable experience, but at the same time connected to the theme. And in the end, we had 4 filming sessions where I tried to give enough contrasting content for Sima to then go away and actually do the crafting with. So Sima, I believe, had the hardest job, and obviously part of that, part of my mining of information and our improvisational world was also inspired by Isabel's soundtracks that she offered, and she offered a number of soundtracks for us to use and to colour various improvisations that we were doing, and yeah, sometimes they had vocals in, sometimes they didn't have vocals in, so we explored various things of how to work together, and in the end, I believe that it was a really rich experience for everybody involved, and obviously from my perspective, it's not worth doing unless it's a rich and fulfilling experience for everybody. So yeah, I think that I don't know if I'm kind of nearing the end of my patter, I think, but I'd just like to say that as a creative team, we created and were creative really like well together, because I think being creative is often about solving problems, and it's that basic aspect of being able to solve problems, think on your feet, and finding that new direction that is your creative job. And I think in the end that I almost got as much out of it as I did get as much out of it as the participants, because as a practicing artist, you're not really an artist unless you're practicing, and it's that repetition, and you need to keep going as an artist. And this really did keep me going through lockdown. It offered me an opportunity to work out how I could get performers to perform without performing, to experience their bodies, to become brilliant improvisers, and to engage with the theme, all without having to rehearse and craft material. So often you can, and that was really a wonderful experience for me, and hopefully it was for everybody else as well. Kate.
Brilliant. No, thank you, Tom.
Hopefully that provided a bit of an insight. It's a bit of a ramble, but there I go.
No, I think it really gave us an indication of the complexity in the processes. And I know when we spoke, having to go online, that you did have concerns, and all I can say is you rose to the challenge. So thank you. And, I think the way that you were working improvisationally with participants, really helped produce creative work. And it was just lovely to see participants with, without any inhibitions on Zoom, which again was a concern of mine at the start of the process. And I again, thank you. I just, it's very interesting hearing about the sort of processes, and obviously I think everybody's sort of learnt from the process as a creative team and as with the participants. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was very enjoyable.
I'm now going to introduce another member of the creative team, and that's Isabel Jones from Salamander Tandem. She's a sound artist, singer and director, and probably many more, multifaceted, as she does multifaceted arts programming and work. For over 30 years, Isabel has brought together performance, sound, movement, visual and sensory artists from the UK and all over the world to make artworks that cross boundaries between people and cultivate human creativity. Working across the field of music, dance, visual arts, architecture, social care, academia and health, she has directed over 50 large-scale music and dance works. So I'm going to hand over and we're going to hear from Isabel.
Hi everyone. Thank you for all that. I think it was really interesting what Tom was saying about normally that when one has a collaborative, an artistic collaboration, one is actually physically in the room with those collaborators. And Tom, myself and Sima, we'd never met before. We were brought together by Kate, and I think it was extraordinary that she chose 3 people that could really connect. And we didn't know that was going to happen. So when I say, when Tom was talking about this immersive quality of improvising within and throwing out preconceptions, but also being an artist within that, that's very much where I was coming from too. I had a wonderful opportunity to be able to go out into various landscapes in the autumn. I think we were just between severe lockdowns. And you see here that this is us out at Netherfield Ponds, and everyone's wearing radio headphones. And as part of that, we were able to keep the distance between us, but using a very simple system that I developed with my father, where one could amplify sound to enable people to, let's imagine a magnifying glass, to take a magnifying glass up to sounds that we perhaps wouldn't normally notice. I mean, there's sound all around us all the time, isn't there? And yet I think because the world is so busy and so noisy, and in ways that we find it disturbing, often we have to cut out what we're hearing. And so using this simple system here, you can see me bent over the edge of Beeston Lock, and there's a chap there talking about his experience of bringing in the boat between, into the lock there, and everybody is able to hear the sound of the ratcheting machine, the old machinery there, the industrial, Beeston Lock there at Canal Side. So it's really interesting. You can hear that up close, the gurgling, the bubbling, the cracking of the boat, the difficulty of getting into that thin space, and the way the water levels change. And all that's possible to hear really, really close. Whereas we might just be walking past and not really notice all that stuff has happened. And when we approach the world through sound, often what happens is that we begin to then notice people. And we begin to notice, who were the people that built this? How is, what about this person with their boat? I've never been interested in canal boats particularly, but this person was fascinating. And it's like that. You go out into a landscape and suddenly there's a skateboarder and he's flying through the air, and there's an incredible sound of the wheels of the skateboard moving, or a bicycle in the air. And suddenly you become drawn to it. And this is how it is when we approach the workhouse. What was very interesting was that we went there with, I had my microphone. We were very lucky to have a talk from Jan, who is from the National Trust. Her and I knew each other way back, and she's an expert on women's history. And I was particularly interested in the effects, there's us in the courtyard, on women, in fact on all people, but particularly you'll hear in the soundtrack that I've chosen the female voice as the means to communicate this environment. And here we are wearing clogs, and everyone would have been wearing clogs. There was around 111 people there living there. And just imagine that you were living with a wall between yourself and your partner, because the men were separated from the women. And imagine that wall. It would be a bit like living in a terraced house, and you can hear someone next door, but you can't see them. But this person's your partner or your child. So this is the feeling of the place, that what would it feel like, and what were the sounds in that environment, and what are they now? Because of course it's been beautifully restored by the National Trust. So off we went. Now, I've got to really tell you a little bit about something called echolocation here. Now, echolocation is a tremendously interesting way to hear sound. My father was totally blind from birth, and he used echolocation to work out how large a space was. And what he would do was strike his cane, and he would hear the sound bounce back from a wall, or he would tap and he could hear how close he was, or he would clap his hands and hear the sound bounce back, or he would call, because he was a singer, and he'd hear the sound resonate. And with this very interesting approach to the environment, we were wearing clogs. So these clogs acted like an echolocation device, because as we moved around the space, and you'll hear this later in the film, you hear the resonance of the different floor surfaces, the stone, the wood, the brick, the concrete. You'll hear moving along the corridors, and maybe a sense of other people present in the building, even though you can't see them. So this became the stimulus for the final piece, where you have this environmental recording, which takes you in right up close into the environment itself. And this is something I think is very interesting. Often when we go outdoors, our minds are full of other things. The past, should have done. The future, oh, maybe I should do that. Our minds are bouncing around. We're feeling maybe dissatisfied with what we've got. We may be feeling not really so happy. Certainly, you know, age 55 and over, there comes a point you almost feel, oh, have I done everything then? Is my career over? And these thoughts can bother you. So there's something about when we can enter a space and become completely immersed in it. And by using this simple system with the headphones, we're amplifying the sound. And in that way, we enter the moment. And in that moment, it becomes really immersive. And we can hear tiny detail that we otherwise wouldn't have heard. So then approaching the composition, again, all this is in isolation from the dancers. But I know quite a lot of the dancers because we're all Nottinghamshire based. And there's a feel in the way that Tom was working that I could really connect with. So I felt I wanted to work with the voice. And you will hear through the sound, there are different ways in which the voice is used. Sometimes sung, sometimes spoken, sometimes as texture, sort of sound, so that the sound can be like movement and it can connect more closely to movement rather than a kind of soundtrack that was made and then dumped or cut and spliced on the top. It's more tailored. So there are these elements of both the environment itself, the human voice, and then you will hear sounds that you might say, well, maybe that's a bit beautiful for the workhouse. You'll hear quite lyrical sounds of the human voice. But I felt, you know, there will be women there of all ages, people in their late teens, and there'll be children, people in their 40s, 60s, there'll be elderly people. And all those women's voices, I tried through 3 ages that are featured within the sound score to get a flavour of how the human voice might be heard within that context. And so finally, then working with Sima was absolutely incredible. You'll meet Sima shortly. Is that we all went to the workhouse. I mean, it was liberating. It was the first time we'd met physically. And we went and moved around the space and we talked together about what we felt was the narrative. And this is pretty tough because not one of us have got ancestors who would have lived in that workhouse that we know of. I mean, I know through having disabled parents that there would have been a high chance that somebody who had an unemployed disabled parent might have ended up somewhere like that. But our lives are so comfortable and so easy. So we were looking for a way of connecting to the experience, and we focused in on isolation. And the central point of the music is where I sing the word isolation, broken into isolation, shun, shun. And when one starts to think about that word and 3 other important words, which were about the creation, the original creation of the workhouse, the vision by Sir Reverend Betcher was to create a place that had seclusion. So the idea that it was a secluded environment cut off from the rest of society. The second one was to create a place that was going to be classified, where people could be classified into different categories. Were they the deserving poor? Were they actually the poor that actually had done no work? Or were they the elderly infirm who deserved a kinder hand? So you've got this sense of seclusion, you've got this classification. So these are 2 very important elements that we drew upon, and that they were very big influences, and you'll hear then this also part of the sound score. So I think that's hopefully give you a little bit of a flavour of the different layers that are there. and hopefully you will really connect through that sound. It is binaural, so if you get the chance to listen through headphones later on, do so. So that's a 3D sound experience. So back to you, Kate. I think I might have run out of.
Oh, well done. No, spot on. We're still good for time. Thank you, Isabel. And again, I just think that demonstrates us working together as a creative team and all the expertise that we've all brought together, and having to work spontaneously, but obviously communicating throughout to bring different kind of elements together into the piece, which obviously we'll see later. So thank you, Isabel. That was really insightful. And now on to the last member of our creative team, Sima Gonsai, who is a screen director, a screen dance director, a programmer and educator. Her work explores innovative ways of interpreting dance on screen, ranging from 60mm drawn animation through to cinematic storytelling and technology experimenting with dance as a vibration. Sima has produced and directed award-winning dance films that have toured internationally and have been broadcast on television. She is currently the co-producer of Flatpack Film Festival Screen Dance Programme, alongside directing screen dance commissions for Arts Council England. So we're going to hear from Sima now. Thank you.
Hi. Yeah, thanks for the lovely intro. It's really nice. Yeah, so a lot of screen dance work. So for anybody who doesn't know what screen dance is, it's putting dance and film together to kind of create a new kind of visual experience of dance. These films are often filmed in outside of a theatre space. They're filmed in site-specific places where dancers then kind of retell the story, or they choreograph a piece that's outdoors, often responding to their environment. So when I was approached to do this project, I was really excited. We originally had 3 different locations that had 3 very different histories connected to them. And then obviously COVID hit us, and so everything kind of went into lockdown. But we still had one remaining potential place that we could go and film, which was the Workhouse. I'd never heard of the history of the Workhouse before, so I was very, very interested to know more. I'm really interested in wanting to go to the space, look at it, look at the different aspects of history, look at the different people that live there, and basically look at the buildings. As a filmmaker, when we make these films, you often go to a location, you will embody that environment, you will feel it, you will see it, you will hear the history, you'll find everything about it. And then from that, visually, I'm looking around the building and I'm thinking, where can we place dancers that can retell this story, but through dance? And so with lockdown even like kind of drilling us down even further, we weren't able to go to the space. So then it all kind of went online into making a Zoom project, a Zoom screen dance project, which I'd never really done before. A really integral part to making screen dance work is you work with a choreographer on site, and then you work with a choreographer within the edit. So the choreography of dance happens as you see it when you film it, but it also, the magic really happens when within the edit as well. So to have a whole Zoom sessions handed over to me, where the choreography really had to happen in the edit, kind of on my own as well, was quite an experience. But what Isabel failed to kind of say is that we had some, and Tom also, is that we had, I think, 12 dancers altogether who provided incredible movement. They interpreted the history, elements of the history of the Workhouse so amazingly, beautifully, very articulate in how they wanted to show different themes of what it was like to live in a place like the Workhouse. And for Isabel as well, then being the technical person who then recorded all of these sessions, which, you know, I have to say was a great feat, because not only was she recorded them, but she was also speaking to the dancers to say, how can you curate your room? You know, how can you make that room look a little bit similar to how somebody would live in the Workhouse, which is quite difficult to do, as you can see from my room. I've got all sorts of manner of things going on here. So there's an element of curating the rooms, teaching the dancers to use technology to be able to then stream those sessions to us. Tom working with them, you know, in a virtual way. It was such an amazing collaborative coming together of people. So out of those 4 sessions, I did deliver one session, which was to explain the process of what screen dance is and what I would do. So my process was take those 4 sessions. I had lots of Zoom footage. So I had lots of gallery footage, which we always recorded a gallery view of all 12 dancers. I also had spotlight kind of footage where myself and Isabel were kind of choosing different spotlight images. So although we did 4 sessions, I think I had in total, you know, hours and hours and hours of things to look through. And that kind of was a challenge in itself. So I then set to kind of create a story arc for the film. You know, how can we, as a viewer who's going to watch this online or on your mobile phone or on your TV, how can that viewer, very different to watching something when you're in a theatre space, really engage with the project? How can they get that experience? And so the story arc really involved a kind of journey through how your experience from coming into the workhouse, signing your name, getting the administration, kind of finding out where you're from, separating you from the men and the women, looking at separation, then looking at the sorrow of being in this place and working hard to earn your keep. And then during this session that I did with the dancers, we kind of explored, you know, what is it that gets you through that experience? You know, this incredibly hard life of being in this workhouse, the hardship, of being in this workhouse. And had a thought that, you know, connection through the love, through your loved ones, you know, the resilience that you find from people around you, the resilience of your loved ones, the resilience of your family. That's what gets you through these types of experiences. So towards the end of the session, we kind of explored how we could involve family into this, and how resilience for ourselves being through lockdown, you know, how families have kind of got us through it. It's kind of got us through the pandemic. So I don't want to give too much away about the film. So we kind of explored those sort of themes, and I had to do it. I did about, I mean, I'm looking through my notes. I did about 5 or 6 different story arcs. You know, how do we begin this film? How does it build into a kind of crescendo? And then how can we then gently bring the audience into connection? So I felt that, you know, with the edit, with Zoom in particular, when we watch Zoom, we see a gallery view of lots of different people talking on the screen at the same time. What I did as an editor is I recreated those gallery views. So I was placing bodies next to each other. So each body, in some instances were choreographed next to each other. That in itself was a very new process for me to be able to do that. Usually, you know, you're on site, you're filming the dancers, you're choosing who's going to stand next to each other, and then you're choreographing in that sense. But with this kind of process, it was placing individuals next to each other who weren't originally in those places in the first place. So yeah, it was a huge learning curve for me. And in terms of choreography, I'm not a choreographer and I'm not a dancer. So this really kind of taught me a lot about how choreographers work. It was fantastic to work with Tom and see his process. It was fantastic to work with the dancers and improvise movement. I could see that they were embodying the words, the experiences that the workhouse presented. And then again, to work with Isabel, who then musically was able to kind of weave all that together. So yeah, great experience. Would love to do more. And yeah, really hope you enjoy the film.
Thanks, Sima. Again, you know, I think it was like a huge jigsaw puzzle that you've managed to kind of piece together. And when people do see the film, you know, I'm sure they'll appreciate, you know, the level of work that's gone into this, and your perceptiveness in, you know, sort of matching people together and also your wonderful kind of way of storytelling through your film. And obviously that was why we really wanted to work with you in the first place. And obviously I think as a creative team, we work really well together, and we have had some discussions about possible plans to do a site-specific work at some time in the future. So thank you, Sima. That was really insightful. Appreciate that. So we're going to hear next from two participants that took part in the online sessions and the whole project. They've been with us since the start of the project. So I'd like to introduce Mary Crow and Stephen John to hear about their experiences of the project. So welcome. Can we just start by both of you, if we start with Stephen, telling us a little bit about your background coming into the project?
Yeah, I'm a visual artist. I've done a lot of work with physical theatre. I've always loved theatre. I've worked with dancers, and my practice has been very much to do with mask theatre. But in more recent years, I've been focusing on drawing and creating sculptures, which always have something about movement in them. So I was attracted to this project because it was connected with my researches into what it is to move, and I like to move.
Thanks for that, Stephen. And yourself, Mary? Oh, I think you're. I'm just going to unmute you. Oh, hang on.
Unmuted.
Yeah.
There we go.
Can you hear me now?
We can. Loud and clear.
Well, I've always wanted to be a dancer, but never had the opportunity. Growing up as a small child, it just wasn't something that would ever be considered to have dance lessons. And I remember, this will kind of show obviously my age, I remember watching Top of the Pops avidly on a Thursday night and thinking, I want to be able to dance. So my career absolutely didn't take me anywhere near dance. I ended up being an academic, so very much being creative, but in my head rather than in my body. To balance that out, I have been doing Tai Chi for 20 years. So movement is very important to me. But then, of course, as I was thinking about what will I do when I want to retire, I thought, I want to dance. I want to dance. And so, fortunately, in Nottingham, we have a very, very good dance community. I enrolled on a course at the Nottingham Playhouse with a wonderful group of people. Very, very welcoming, because I'd gone from being very able in what I did for a job to doing something totally new to me. And it is the memory thing, remembering the moves, remembering the dance sequences. But everybody was very forgiving, and it was a very welcoming place. And then, of course, we had this opportunity through Kate and City Arts to work with Tom. I was fortunate to be able to be involved in some of the initial sessions that we were physically in person, which was a great, there I am, a great experience. And yes, it has obviously had to change dramatically because of COVID.
Stephen, I mean, what were your expectations going into the project? Obviously, they've changed radically, but I just wanted to sort of hear your kind of viewpoint on that, really.
I think what I was hoping from the project was to be involved with a community of people of my own age, to explore movement when you have certain limitations imposed on you. When you're young, you kind of can push those limitations. So it was that the sense of community allowed you to be whoever you are. So that was important. I was very excited about the idea of doing site-specific work, and the three different places which had been proposed to work in. I knew all three of them, and I thought all three of them were really intriguing, and I liked that possibility. So that was certainly a draw. I didn't know Tom's work, but I managed to get to one of the initial things, and I liked the approach, that kind of improvisational, open approach. So yeah, I didn't have that was my expectations, and obviously they were lost. The three venues, the three sites were lost.
So how did you feel about sort of knowing then that the project was moving to sort of online sessions? I mean, how had you sort of felt about that, or were you trepidatious? Or
oh yeah, I was trepidatious, challenged. You know, my technical know-how is fairly limited. I've got a good computer, but I didn't really know how to use it. So yeah, it was, oh shit, got to do this now. But but already I had built up a confidence in the creative team. I felt held by the creative team, and I could move forwards with this new challenge.
And yeah. What about yourself, Mary? What were your thoughts knowing that we were having to do everything online?
I disappointed initially, because having experienced the face-to-face sessions with Tom, that clearly was what we were looking forward to. And when you're thinking about contemporary dance and movement, it is I think it's easier to be in the energy of other people, really. And so initially I was not sure how it was going to work, but I do have to say, in the same way that Stephen said, we did have confidence in the team, or else we wouldn't have stuck with it for so long. And because things had to change dramatically, frequently, it was a learning process for all of us. And Isabel giving us tips on lighting, which I've tried to adhere to today, and things like that, because technology, basic emails, fine, but thinking about filming was quite scary, really. But I think we all had the feeling that we were in it together, and that we all wanted to do our best and produce the best that we could produce, really.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you. And going back to Stephen then, what do you think, was there an impact of the project upon you? I mean, did anything surprise you during the project? What stood out for you?
Process, it being witness to other creatives bashing against a brick wall and having to change the whole direction of what particularly Tom was intending to do. That was the face that we saw most directly, and I was delighted and fascinated to watch and witness his process of changing his, not direction, just the way he was going to do it. I mean, that's inspiring for any creative is to see other people, other creatives going, right, this is the vision, but now I've got to do it in a different way. And that that was a very important part. And the other thing which I've really taken on board is Sima talking about the story arc, which isn't necessarily about telling a straightforward story, but to have a certain rhythm that takes you from one place to another. So I'm kind of been thinking a lot about that.
And Mary, do you think it's inspired you to sort of continue with dance, or, you know, what do you think this project has given back to you?
Oh, absolutely inspired me to continue with dance. And I learned a lot of the more technical aspects because I was confined to this room. And we had to really focus on those aspects in such a confined space. But also the way in which you improvised and you thought about the words and the music. And as I said before, I do Tai Chi, so I do movement in a grounded way, but this was very different. And so for me, that was what was really exciting about it. And I would dearly love to carry on dance and hopefully be able to do it face to face and with other people.
Great. Well, I think we're all waiting for that day. So thank you to you both. I think that gives the audience a really good insight into, you know, not only the creative team, but also thank you to you for your dedication and motivation. And that definitely kept me going throughout the project. So thank you. We are going to go to the finale now, and we're going to watch the film. But I'd just like to remind people before we do that if you do want to ask questions of any of the creative team, moving memory dance, or the participants, please pop that into the chat whilst we're watching the film. So Jo, over to you. If we could watch the film, that would be fantastic.
inspection, classification, seclusion, segregation, separation, accommodation, supervision, inhibition, occupation, isolation, institution, regimentation, observation, administration, excavation, situation, allocation, population.
Thank you. I think everybody should be enormously proud of their achievements, and it's really nice to kind of watch it back in a relaxed way without having to think of, you know, problem solving and doing this, that and the other. So yes, I think everybody should be enormously proud of their achievements. If anybody does want to write any comments in the chat function, then we can obviously read those out and ask the panel. Justine Schneider says bravo, so thank you, Justine, for that. And thank you everybody for watching tonight. Thank you everybody for your contributions. So thank you to the creative team. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you all. I've really thoroughly enjoyed it. There have been stressful points, but on the whole, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And as I say, we should be very proud of where we're kind of at. Thank you also to the fantastic participants that have stuck with us throughout. So I really appreciate your motivation and dedication to working with us. And also your kind of co-production and ideas and input and energy as well, which obviously without you, it wouldn't have happened at all. We've got a really beautiful from the Puppet Festival, Nottingham Puppet Festival. So thank you for that as well. And thank you tonight to Moving Memory Dance as well. everybody's found it very challenging working during this time, and it was just beautiful to see the work that they've been doing, and obviously hear from the facilitators too about some of their kind of problem solving within the sort of period of time over this last year. And lastly, thank you to National Trust as well for, you know, enabling us to use material and sound recordings at Southwell and accessing their venue to obviously contribute towards the sound pieces that Isabel has made. So thank you, everyone. And just to remind people that this will go live onto social media after the event, so please feel free to watch it again and catch it again, or please feel free to share it. So thank you, everybody. Good night. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.